Hello ladies, I'm Mrs. Sherman and I have a blog and I'd really appreciate it if you would go over there and leave a comment. Also, please, if you're new, be sure to hit that bell because then you'll get notifications when the next video is on. And also my PayPal is over there. However, what's really most important here for me today is to provide a place that you can come to hear. So you don't need to watch me. I'm not showing you how to do anything. One of my desires was to find someone to listen to. I often listen to music or somebody reading something while I'm working. It seems to, it makes the work lighter. When we were children, we used to sing through certain chores, and we had the old church hymnals, you know, that they had replaced with some new ones, and so we got the old ones and we learned all those songs by one of the brothers or sisters would say the verse to you, well, and then you would sing it and repeat it until you learned the whole thing. And we would be doing tedious chores that children don't do today, and we learned a lot of songs that way. And I like to listen to something while I work. And so I decided to do videos to support the homemaker while she works, so you don't have to stop and watch something. And I have my favorite videos, and but they all require me to stop and watch something. I just love some of the craft videos and some of the clean with me videos and sewing and other things like that. But I don't want to stop and look, so I'd rather just listen. So this is just for your listening. So maybe you could write to me and tell me what all that you did while you were listening. I'm hoping this will go more than 20 minutes, and I have 3 sections that I've developed to do these on. They are appearance, that means getting ready to approach your housework, and the actual housework, I'll give you some ideas how to get through that. And then dealing with people, because you're living with people, you're living with family, and what to do with those who need your help and those who need a little bit of encouragement. And so I just hope I can accomplish all that today, and also read you a story. I have my own stories, but I like to read some things sometimes. So today I'm going to start with appearance, and I would like to say that the first thing that you want to do in the morning is to get ready. And even if it's late, even if it's too late, get started, do the things that you have to do that will make the family function as quickly as you can, and go get ready. And choose clothing and things that will improve your mood, that will make you happy. And I like to, now this is just my personal, I like to go with what's in bloom outside, what kind of weather we're having, what kind of day we're having. As a matter of fact, I invented fog fashion, rain fashion, and other kinds of fashion, and I should do desert fashion because we've had some drought, we've had some hot days, everything has turned brown, and it's actually quite pretty sometimes. And I did include a painting that someone did from Pinterest on one of my previous blog posts, so I want you to go look at that to get the idea of, I call that mood dressing, where I'm not saying choose the mood you're in, but the mood of the atmosphere around you, and it would make you happy and make your home a happy place and make you a happy person for your children. Now today I'm wearing clothes that I bought at Walmart by Time and True, which is a company that they have featured, which has fairly good clothes, and they're 100% cotton or rayon, which is a derivative of cotton. And I don't wear plaid very much, but it's quite popular around here. And one of the movies that I watched recently, I know it's been out for a while, but I just recently found it, was called Princess Cut, and it was a really fun thing to watch, and everybody in it was wearing a plaid shirt, and every scene everyone had a different plaid shirt on it, and so I kind of got interested in plaid again. So that's why I'm wearing this today. And yesterday at church, a lady brought me some, goodness sakes, I can't even think, sweet peas? Are these sweet peas? And my goodness, I had not realized what a scent that the sweet pea has. It kind of goes with my shirt. And years ago, I think probably in the 1980s, the shelves at stores were full of natural florals, like florals that you wouldn't normally have in a high-end perfume, but sweet pea was one of them. And there were candles you could get that were sweet pea. I don't know if you can still get things like that. And you could also get other things like carnation and blue bonnet and things that just normally weren't usually the predominant flower, just the common flower. And anyway, I just love these. And in honor of it, I have a sweet pea teacup that I got. Someone gave it to me from an antique store, and just beautiful, isn't it? No, there's no markings on it or anything. Just wanted you to see that, and I'll publish that on my blog. It kind of goes with, doesn't it? So I just thought that that sweet flower was so enchanting, and that I can still smell it, and I wish I could find the scent. So make sure you get up, get yourself ready, and if you have not, you can take the video with you and go and get yourself prepared, fix your hair, get cleaned up, get dressed up, and get ready for your day. And please wear something sturdy on your feet. Now, I have found that the little short boots that have the zipper on the side actually support my arches a lot better and protect my toes. I have been injured too many times in the kitchen from a falling lid or falling glass, just anything you drop anywhere in the house. And so I cover my feet, and you can get some really pretty boots. I got some pink ones the other day, so I'll show those to you also. And so your appearance is so important because it affects your mood. So ladies, please, and your children will just thank you for it so much. They'll be so glad to see you. They'll say, Mom, you look so pretty. They'll be so enchanted by it. And it's so important for them to have that memory because they're going to choose those things that you like. You're going to have a big influence on them. So I want to talk about your mood a little bit because that affects your housekeeping, and I have said in previous videos that it's dangerous to your health and to your mental health also to be forever pessimistic about everything. And I've given examples of people who object to everything and told you about Jane Austen and how she formed some of her characters from these people that came into their parlor, their front room, and discussed things with her father. And she used them as characters in her novel. And there are many instances where these moods, if you allow them, if you allow a foreboding feeling of complaint constantly to shroud over you, it's going to affect how you live for the rest of your life. And you cannot poison your family with that. This mood of always objecting to everything, always contradicting. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't be able to apply truth and teach other people, especially those under our wing, but we have to learn to be cheerful and optimistic in all things. And this is so important because look at all the times in the Bible where God was not pleased with people who brought back bad reports and pessimistic reports, and we can't do it. He's more pleased with it. We can do it. And you'll be happier too if you think you can do it. Now, I might have cited before. Now, people have complained that I get too much into preaching, and I don't want to do that. I live with a preacher. I live around religion and religious people all the time, and I want to talk about more homemaking in this vlog. But I do want to talk about the giant and David, because when the giant was taunting the armies of Israel, everyone was afraid, and David was the one that said, what's going to be done about this giant that taunts us? And no one wanted to go and confront him. And so I look at, and with just a small weapon, David was able to destroy this giant that was demoralizing the people of Israel and making them feel like failures. So I look at some of the things, the daunting things, like that floor-to-ceiling bookshelf over there that hasn't been touched or gone through since 1992, the olden days. Or that room back there that's our storage room that I have to go through. It just kind of occurred to me one day that somebody else will have to do that if I get sick, if I get laid up, if something happens that I can't get to it. And that isn't very thoughtful. I want to leave my place so that those that have to come in and clean it up and pack it up are not going to have a huge burden on them. So I want to go through everything. And recently I've been going through books and discovering some things about my collection and uh, what's important in life. And so I want to make sure that, and the more that I clean, and I want you to see if this happens to you, the more that I go through things, the more that I sort, the less confused my mind is. The more I see where everything is, the more I see, the more reasonably stacked everything is and cleaned, the better I feel, the more optimistic I feel, and I feel I can do anything, and that room back there, storage room, and that bookshelf there, those are giants. What's to be done about this giant that is taunting my home? I'm going to, I'll show them, I'll show them who's boss around here, and I'm going to clean it up, and nobody's going to stop me. So this is part of the homemaking. I also want to tell you that if you've got something to do, please do not stay here and watch me. This is so that you can listen as you go. So if you've got something to do, please go and do it. If you want to stack, sort, bake, anything like that, and you have enough quiet that you can listen, this is what this is for. It's not for you to sit here and watch me. I've got nothing to perform. You know what I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to block the garbage can that's out there, because that truck is going to come right in the middle of my speech and gather it up and make a huge noise and a huge commotion. I'm trying to sit in front of it. It doesn't look like it's going to work. It takes a lot to create a background for a video that you're actually going to watch. When I was putting this all together and realizing that it's raining outside, I actually wanted to go outside to do this video, and realizing that there are going to be things that are in the way or showing, I realized how much work it takes. You actually need a stage manager to set up for a video, but hopefully you're not watching this, you're listening. So now the reason for, I wanted to, since I discussed clothing, and I've talked about this a time or two, I have mentioned to you that I am from the olden times. I am from the 1950s, and we were an optimistic bunch of people. We loved life. We loved our automobiles. We loved our houses. We loved transportation. We liked communication, anything like that. And we liked to travel around our own country. We loved our highways and our old our road trips, and publishing and books and letters and all kinds of things that we participated in. And I wanted to tell you that in the 1950s there was something called the house dress, which was kind of inherited from the 1930s and the 1940s, but they were horrible. And I know people like to say that the 1950s was so glamorous, but they're using clothing that that was nicer. And there were house dresses, but they were not all that great. They were just kind of a little, what called a duster, and you buttoned them up the front and wore them around the house. And when you got ready to go somewhere, you dress up in something different. But they weren't really very pretty. They didn't fit well. They didn't cheer me up. So I decided early in life I wasn't going to wear one of those house dresses. And a lot of women rejected them in the 50s and decided instead to go for the jeans and shirt because they were more comfortable. And so I wanted to tell you why, in comparison to the 1980s clothes by Laura Ashley, why we loved those clothes, because they were the answer to the house dress, only they were prettier. They tended to imitate some of the Victorian elements in the sleeves and in the length, but they were looser. They were basically a blouse and a skirt attached together. And Laura Ashley herself said on a film that these were not for posh wear, they were for the home. And many women my age and our daughters, we all wore the coordinating mother-daughter, and the grandmothers and the mothers and the daughters. Often I would see them in church wearing the same pattern of Laura Ashley dresses, quite popular to do that. What was interesting about the grandmothers, they had pockets in their dresses, and they were all 100% cotton and just beautiful florals, plaids, little prints or solids. And the grandmothers would keep little, they would make a little doll or stuffed animal to put in those pockets, and in church they could pull out something for the little ones to play with. It was so interesting to see that, and we did too in our home. We had the mother-daughter dresses, which, I don't know, it gives you a feeling of family identity, you know, to have this. And I'm sure that the designers mocked it and made fun of it after that, but it was the last time, those Laura Ashley dresses. And there were many companies that produced dresses that were similar because they were very, very much in demand, and not all of them were the brand of Laura Ashley. I had several from Walmart and the thing that I missed the most about those dresses that we can't get anymore are the collars, because the collars was like wearing an apron almost, and they often would cover the front part and just give you that little extra layer in the front, and I appreciated it so much. They were such dresses of great dignity, and the white color especially was very nice. And so the 1980s dresses and patterns were an answer to the 1950s house dress, and they were so much nicer and for the home, and they suited the idea of dressing to fit the weather or the day or the climate or the season. They were just wonderful. If you can get some old Victoria magazines from 1989 to the year 2000, you're going to see some of the advertisements for these clothes, and also within their articles. So that to me is my answer to the house dress today. Now, I wanted to speak a little bit about homemaking, and last time I talked about a certain aspect of the kitchen and getting the dishes done and getting the things cleaned up around it, but now I'm going to go to the bedroom, and a child's bedroom especially. One of the techniques that I learned that you might benefit from, now everybody has their own way of doing things, is to, you know, children always get a little bit over their head and a little overwhelmed. It's always good to go in there and give them a good fresh start and clean up their room for them. They learn eventually, but they appreciate it so much. And if you can go in with a good mood and not lecture the children while you're and not be angry while you're cleaning, and just say, let's get your room cleaned up. Let's make it really a pretty place to be where you can spend many happy hours. And so the first thing that I would do is make the bed, and this is for the reason that after making the bed, I am going to take everything off of the floor, off of surfaces around, and put them on the bed. And then I'll sweep the floor. And after that, we will sort, and this is where the children can learn to organize. We will sort things that are the same. Gather up all papers, gather up all books, gather up all toys. You might want to even separate the toys, the types of toys. Gather those up, and clothing. Next comes clothing. Next comes dirty clothing, clean clothing, and you get them all into categories and sort through them. And you can sing while you do it. You can listen to a story. You can whatever you want, and get those all cleaned up, and then kind of smooth the bed out again. And this is very helpful. I used to say for the bedroom, you know, clean up around and then do the bed last. That doesn't work as well because you can't always distinguish the covers from the clothes. So make the bed first, pile things on top, sort the things, sweep the floor, and the children will be absolute. Then put something special on their bed, a favorite doll, a book, so that they can have their quiet time later on. And so that's my hint for the bedroom. What do you do? And of course, every family has their own method and their own needs. So now I would like to go on to a few other things. I would like to read you a couple stories, and then and because we're going to go on to people now, I always like to do appearance and homemaking and people, and I know you would like for me to talk more about homemaking. I can't quite think of what to tell you. most of the time, because it's your home and your family and your personality and your mood, you need to figure out some things for yourself. Now, yesterday I swept the house, the entire house, and I started at the walls. In each corner, I'd pull out a few things and sweep and get that all straightened up. And I straightened up as I went, poofing the pillows and straightening the blankets and arranging the rugs and just all that. And I even did some dusting as I went. And then moved the things back, then did another corner, then did another section until I had swept this big pile of dust and dirt. We live in the country, so of course we have a lot in here. And we do not remove we have wood floors, and we don't remove our shoes. We remove our boots if they have mud on them. But basically, people are in and out so much. We're in and out, down to get the mail, down to down to meet somebody outside, and we're in and out so much. We can't be constantly changing our shoes. So we have a pair that we just wear in and out, and we just accept the fact that we live in the country and we're going to wear our shoes in and out. And we're very, very busy, too busy to take our shoes off. So I wanted to read to you today. There seems to be such an interest in the olden times, and in a way I am from the olden times because my parents were pioneers, and I watched them build a log house on a homestead in Alaska, and spent many happy years up there. And I have a book called Christians on the Oregon Trail, and I love to read. It's by Jerry Rushford. I'll put a picture of that in a place where you can buy that if you want to. I don't know if they're available anymore. I think I got the last copy. And it was about the Christians that gathered in, I believe it was Kansas in 1848, I believe. And this is just a little, he got a lot of his information from letters, from church bulletins, from newspaper articles, from diaries, and actual evidence of the real people that were traveling this trail. Now, you've all heard about the Donner Party and the tragedy that they had because they tried to skip some things and get to Oregon early, and they got lost in the mountains, and many of them froze. But this is a good story of the Christians on the Oregon Trail and how they fared. And I thought it was fascinating because not one of them, now they did have a few tragedies, but most of them came to Oregon having had no losses, no illness, no accidents, nothing, and had food left over. And they attributed it to the fact that they stopped on the Lord's Day, and at least part of the time. They might have traveled a bit on the Lord's Day, but they would stop and have a worship service or a worship time together, and this is called the Lord's Day. Now, there were several parties of wagons with different wagon masters and leaders that did this, but this one was led by a couple of preachers, I think. So I think you're going to be delighted about what you read, especially in relationship to what goes on today. This is called the Lord's Day. On Sunday, May 28th, now, by the way, if you live in Australia and you live in South Africa, you can get books like this that record these treks and these pioneer wagons that went to the land that you now live in that have very similar stories. So you can find them, and I have read some of them. I can't tell you the names of them, but they're very similar because it was the same era. On Sunday, May 28, a minor crisis developed when most of the church-going population in the train, now the train, I mean, it was a selection of Conestoga-covered wagons all lined up together. They called that a train before the train was invented. Also interesting that it took several months for these people to travel from east to west to settle Oregon, Washington, and California. And some of them, by the time they got there, the railroad had been finished, and the train had come, and they could easily go back and see their relatives in the east on the train in just a couple days. I thought that was interesting. And my husband has a story to tell you. I'm afraid to let him come on the video because if you like him, you'll want more of him and none of me because he's so interesting. But his grandmother came to Kansas on a covered wagon and lived to see the airplane, the commercial airlines. And I think she might have even traveled on one. I thought that was interesting. Okay. On Sunday, May 28, a minor crisis developed when most of the church-going population in the train made it clear that they were not going to travel on the Lord's Day. They needed a day of rest and worship, and so did their livestock. There was much grumbling, and some threatened to break ranks and go on without the others. The Christians in the Restoration movement had plenty of support from other Christians on that issue. David Lennox, who was chosen captain of one of the sections of the train, was a devout Baptist who would not travel on the Lord's Day. According to his son, this is an interesting story. Now, I'm not Baptist. We're in the Churches of Christ. But in those days, they were very, very supportive of one another in their beliefs. On that first Sunday morning, Father was resting in his tent, and Mother and the 4 girls were taking it easy after an arduous week, when several from the families around us broke in impatiently upon us and wanted to know at what hour we were going to get off. "How is this, Captain Lennox," said one of them, "that you are not up and off this fine morning?" "We are not going to travel today," replied my father. "This is the Lord's Day. The cattle need rest, and we need rest, and your families need rest." And I want to mention also that they often had a service where they took communion, where they sang, where the gospel was preached, and an invitation was offered. And there were several conversions on this Oregon Trail. So after he said, "The cattle need rest, and we need rest, and your families need rest," this is what the reply to this rebellious group was. "Oh, you can't cram that down our throats." And nothing has changed, has it? Was the vigorous and irreverent reply. "We're going on." "Well," said Captain Lennox, "I have no authority to stop you, but you will find it to your interest to travel with a well-guarded company rather than go it alone." Dr. Marcus Whitman caught up with the train on June 18. He agreed with the practice of resting on the Lord's Day, but he warned the immigrants that they were behind schedule and needed to travel faster and farther each day. The immigrants responded positively to his constant admonition, "Travel, travel, travel." The arrival of Dr. Whitman was a welcome sight. Here was a man who not only possessed valuable medical knowledge, but he had been across this trail on 2 previous occasions. His experience also proved helpful during the 5-day fording of the South Platte River in the first week of July. The train passed through Chimney Rock on July 7, reached Scotts Bluff on July 9, and rolled into Fort Laramie on July 12. Fuel for cooking purposes was not always readily available to the travelers, and before long they had to rely on the bountiful supply of buffalo chips scattered along the trail. So I want to read another story here in this book about, all of us have done something that we just cringe, where we've forgotten a child was left behind. You got in the car and you started the motor and realized one of them's not in there, or you forgot to pick somebody up. We've all done that. I want you to read this Oregon Trail story. It's called Left Behind. It said, Daniel Boone Matheny. A lot of people named their children after the early pioneers, and the early settlers of America. There were a lot of people named George Washington with another last name, or Thomas Jefferson, or Andrew Jackson, or Daniel Boone. These people just named their children after them. Daniel Boone Matheny was only 14 years old when he drove one of his father's wagons across the trail that summer. In later years, he would become an effective evangelist in the Restoration movement. But in the summer of 1843, the olden times, he was a very young teenager who was often bored by the slow and laborious pace of the wagon train. His sister remembered. One day my brother Daniel, an easygoing, dreamy-eyed boy, was driving one of our teams. He was well toward the rear of the long line of wagons when he fell asleep. His oxen, going slower and slower, finally stopped altogether, and the following drivers thought it was a fine joke when they pulled around and out and around him to leave the boy there, and the wagon standing there in the lonely road, laughing as they left. It was not until camp was made, several hours later, that father missed Daniel and his oxen, and hastily organized a party to go back for him. Everyone was frightened, for we were in Indian country, but they found Daniel quite safe, still asleep in the middle of the dusty road. Father was very angry at the men who had left him behind. Everyone was provoked about it. I suppose that something was said, there usually was, when father felt so justified, but anyway, it never happened to Daniel again, or to anyone else in the party for that matter, and it was never laughed about or spoken of as a joke either. I think that that is wonderful because, 1 Corinthians 13 talks about love does not rejoice in somebody else's failure, something like that. I don't think even when you're raising children that if they've made a mistake and it's just been a major thing like this, that they should be made fun of or reminded of or teased until they're in pain. I don't think that's right, and I never allowed that. I never allowed teasing in my home. The future preacher was fortunate that he was not the victim of a serious accident. Up until that time, the Great Migration of 1843 was preceded without any fatalities. So I just wanted to remind you of that. This was a wonderful lesson, this is, not to forget the Lord's Day, because that one particular party that didn't forget the Lord's Day, that stopped and remembered the Lord's Day, didn't have the sorrows that a lot of the other parties did, that wanted to get there fast and wanted to take shortcuts. And I think there's a lesson to be learned for you at home too, that there won't be as many accidents in the home, there won't be as many problems if you're alert, if you take time off and you take your Lord's Day off too, and if you take time off to rest properly. I think that that's really, really important. Now, I want to go on to speech. More speech and more working with children, and the working with others, and the reason being that when you have little children at home, and it's so important because they can become adults if they're with bad habits if you don't gently teach them. And one of the things we need to teach them is about monotone. Now, you come across children and they're just having, some rest and a quiet time, and they're not bothering anybody, but they're talking in a monotone. They're drone on and on and on. And so in order to teach them not to do that, because they can become adults that will sit there and just put you to sleep with a monotone, I found some things, and I believe it was in the 4th edition of McGuffey Reader from Christian schools, and there were many editions of these readers. They would revise them every year, so they're all so different. But I believe in the front of the 4th McGuffey Reader edition for Christian schools, they were the ones that were published in 1843 for schools. And in those times, most of the schools were called dame schools because the mothers would take turns teaching. But there was a section in there on inflection, and the word of a sentence was written up when you had to raise your voice up, and the last word was down. And one of the words, I'm trying to think of where it was, I don't have it here, but it was something like, was he home? And the home would be typed upward, or was he out? And that would be typed downward. And it was all done in a series of questions so that the children could learn to speak with inflection. So I wrote out a whole lot of sentences, and one of that weren't all questions, so that they could learn to have rising inflection and falling inflection. So you would be writing a sentence, and then you write one word going up, whether you do it on a chalkboard or dry erase board or just on paper. Then they would have to read them like music. So, are you happy today, or are you sad? And you would write these things going down, and that's how you learn to have inflection in your voice. And then the other thing that you need to teach children regarding speech, of course, is to speak appropriately. It's not good to say that all adults are overly optimistic and and their world is ruined. That is just a nasty, horrible thing to say. And I've heard people as old as their 20s talking about that kind of thing. And that I am multi-generational because we didn't all invent ourselves. We came from our great-grandmothers and our grandmothers, and it's just like on the Oregon Trail. We all came from these people, didn't we? And they're not somebody to be despised. So you shouldn't despise the elderly, the older, your parents, or even your children. If you start categorizing them and saying, well, all young people are ignorant or something like that, what we want to do is bring the generations together because we're interdependent and we're multi-generational. We want to see each other's success. We want to help each other. And so the other thing I wanted to mention is that if you want to be successful in life and you're young, don't think that by breaking away from your family, you're going to be any more successful than they were, because your family's put there to be a support for you and to be helpful for you. You're not going to learn anything extraordinarily better than what you can learn from them and the home and the experience. Plus, they're able to keep you safe at home while you go through life. And till you get ready to go out on your own, you really need to stick with your family and learn and be stable. Now, I would like to say also, going back to words and inflection in your voice, that I read in I was looking for this information. I have all kinds of books, and I mentioned the Ethel Cotton Conversation course, and it might have been in one of those little booklets, but one of the training booklets on speech said to use your upper resonators and your lower resonators, and that would prevent too much flat monotone. And your upper resonators, of course, you can feel them when you talk up high. You can feel the vibration right here on the top of the bridge of your nose, and the lower resonators are right here. So you use a combination of them so that your voice doesn't sound too much monotony. And you can find information on this, I'm sure, that's probably better than what I can give you. So far I have spoken for 30 minutes, but I don't know how much you can get done in 30 minutes, so I'm going to continue to talk about a number of things. And so another thing I think you need to avoid when talking to others are things like you men or you women. I've heard both sides say that. Men will say something disparaging, say you women are just, you always do this, or you men. I don't think that's very nice, because every person is a person made by God and has a soul and is responsible to God. That you can't categorize anybody in a group, really. You just really can't, especially if you're a Christian, because everyone's a unique individual. And so we have to be careful about insulting people that way. And also, if you are wanting to save the world, just forget that. Because I've seen too many people who wanted to save the world, and even religious people want to save the world in a religious sense. They'll lose their own families, and preachers especially. They just want to do so much. They have such a heart for the world, but they don't have a heart for their own family. And they can lose their own family by trying to save other people. And all those people that they left their family for in order to save, or neglected their family for, those people don't remember them in the future. The preacher probably couldn't even tell you their name. But women have the problem too, and that they want to, women at home especially, they think, well, I've got time, and they feel guilty because they're home and they're not under a lot of pressure, so they put themselves under a lot of pressure in something like ministry. They want to do ministry. Look, your home is your ministry, and this is part of your service to Christ. And I can't understand why you would want to give yourself more than you can handle, because you will always neglect one. And no man can have two masters. Either you'll neglect one or neglect the other. So let this homemaking business be your mission in life, and do it up to the best of your abilities. I visited a woman a couple of years ago, and she had just made a dollhouse out of her little humble abode. And when the spring came, she would redecorate it, or she would do her gardens, and she would, every season was an absolute delight to her. And her home was, she had done a lot to make sure that she could be hospitable at a moment's notice. Everything was ready. She had food ready. She had everything so that it could be easily prepared, and anyone could come in that she invited. And so this is what you need to do, is to minister to your own family and to those near you, but don't be gone so much that you neglect the rest of your family while you help other people. Now, in helping other people, before you do it, remember, find out, do they have a mother? Do they have a father? Do they have a husband? Do they have brothers? Do they have children? Do they have people that are responsible for them that could help them? Otherwise, if you don't, now some people, yes, we want to help, but it'd be better to teach them than to actually do things for them, because they need to learn to be independent and not be a burden on other people. And so there will be more time for your homemaking if you're not out running all the time trying to help other people. And the best thing you can do is be a stable homemaker, and they will turn to you if they need help. But I don't think that you can neglect your family and do ministry, because your family, you're neglecting your own ministry if you do that. And church work is wonderful, and of course we all love to get together with people that think the same way we do. But our mission should be to make sure that our family doesn't become needy and become dependent and cause a burden on other people. We need to keep them happy and take care of our own people and our own health and everything like that. Now, if you have any, oh yes, somebody was asking me about laziness, and I've tried to study that a little bit. Laziness, how to avoid laziness in the home. It is very difficult if you have been used to walking past something, and after a while you don't see it anymore. Maybe there's something that needs to be cleaned, straightened up, swept, but you've walked past it or so much that after a while you don't see it. So you have to walk through your house with a critical eye, and almost be of a mind of a maid or a servant, to have that mentality to walk through, that you're preparing for someone else. You're actually being quite nice to your family and to yourself, but you have to have a critical eye towards it, and in order to keep it the way that you want. Now, I'm hoping that you can use that technique. Put your apron on, go around and clean it for the lady that's going to be coming and using, which is you. And you kind of have two roles. You have the role of the servant, and you have the role of the master in a way too. Now, I hope that this has been valuable to you, and I hope that you will listen while you work. And I'd like to extend it, but I can't think of anything else, and I can't even read my notes. I scribble these things as I go. Oh, I need to say that. Oh, I need to say that. Of course, now I got them here. I even read the darn things. So anyway, I hope that you have a wonderful day and you have great success in your home. Please leave me a list in the comments. It's very important. I don't have comments on the video itself. You have to go over to my blog, and I will leave you a link for that. I hope you have a wonderful, successful day in homemaking, and that being at home, if you could get it to where that is the place you long to be, you like it better than anywhere else, and eventually you can get your home to where you would rather eat in than eat out, because your food tastes better and you have spent more time on it, you've studied it, and you can do a better job, and it becomes more pleasant to be home than to be somewhere else. And I can remember anniversaries that we had where I decided, well, you know what, why don't we just stay home? And the children would get tablecloths out and teacups and candles, and they would make presents, and we would get a cake for our anniversary, and they became part of it. And so not only did it prevent us from having so much money going out, but the just the tiring, you know, the children, that way they can't, when they're in a restaurant or they're somewhere else, they can't go do what they want. But, you know, they could come and go to their rooms, play, do whatever they want, because we were having our anniversary at home. And I hope you get to that point where you like it better. You like the atmosphere better at home for just about everything that you do. And the way that you can keep from being, for it being too much sameness, is do what many women used to do. They would rearrange their furniture, they would exchange their colors and their curtains, they'd repaint, they'd do things like that to keep it from getting to be too monotonous. Anyway, I wanted to say God bless you. Thank you for your kind thoughts, and some of you who have donated, and for keeping me going. And God bless. See you next time. Bye.